Hi everyone, Namaste. This is Kunal Bothra. Welcome back to YouTube Live. Today, of course, we've seen the market going into a complete bloodbath. I think today is the best day to try and describe this as a bloodbath. The Nifty was down 900 plus points. I think on closing basis, we may have probably recovered some. The bank Nifty also fell into a sharp correction. I think we were down at one point more than 2,200 plus points on the bank Nifty. But of course, in the last half an hour, last 1 hour, there was some bit of recovery which came by into the banking index, and fortunately, I think we were able to just get back into some bit of recovery. But the idea and the reason, of course, we all know is that what happened across the US indices as well as the tariff announcements, which we've seen over the last 1 week. So, the markets were anticipating that 2nd of April onwards, maybe there could be a bit of increase in volatility. But सरप्राइजिंगली क्या हुआ 2 अप्रैल के बाद 3 अप्रैल को जब ऐसा लगा कि इंडियन मार्केट्स स्टार्टेड टू रिएक्ट लेस. एवरीवन थॉट दैट maybe, just maybe, there could be a chance that the Indian markets could probably have decoupled, or at least the impact could have been felt less. But Friday ke markets ke baad mein, I think that's where fear started to creep in, because I'm sure all of you guys who were on WhatsApp and other social media forums, you would have seen the kind of messages, tweets, research data points, etc., being flagged down. Today, of course, like what we do every single time, we provide a unique data point. We provide one of the classic observations. We would do that exactly today. And the data point which I'll be flagging off today is exceptional. Okay, because and you would never have seen it even in the textbooks of your technical analysis. So what I'm trying to do is just about trying to redefine what the new age technical analysis is actually going through in terms of what's change, and how using those classic observations you can probably strategize and devise a strategy for yourself. So if you remember in the previous YouTube session, especially on the 3rd of March, 4th of March, where we discussed that we are in for a monster rally, we had a very good monster rally, almost like a 10% rally. 1800 पॉइंट 1850 पॉइंट के आसपास हमने रिकवर किया. Of course, the greed and the crave is that maybe markets wanted more. But there are many changes which have happened, and as I said, that it's a jigsaw puzzle in the markets, and every new data point which adds or gets added to the data point or the current market mood makes the puzzle a lot more tricky to solve. So we were discussing that how closer to the 20-day moving average, 50 and the 20-day moving average crossover, the markets would prepare itself for a potential turnaround of sorts. But on 2nd of April and on 3rd of April, post the announcements, we've not seen any intraday or a bit of a pullback on the indices, and that's why you actually saw the index falling very sharply. But again, as I said, today's observation is completely different than what we've been discussing earlier, and it's a mixture of both Nifty as well as the US market analysis. So first of all, hi and hello to everyone. Sahil Madan, hi. Manoharan Deandayalu, Amit Singh, best, hello. Abhijit Chavda, oh lovely. Yeah, okay, I think he's the same Abhijit Chavda as you can see in the profile picture, my batchmate. Hi Abhijit, nice to see you. Vaibhav Jain, my first live session. Lovely. Vaibhav, I hope that you've joined us with a lot of expectation, and I will try and ensure that I'll fulfill the expectations, which I do. I try and ensure that I do for all of my Facebook and YouTube lives. Sahil Madan says, "Bought time bad live." Yes, of course, Sahil Madan. But again, I think as I say, every time that जरूरत पड़ती है जब market correction आता है, and when there is a lot of uncertainty flowing around, that's the best time to try and come out and give you those technical tidbits so that you can understand the structure of the markets. Captain Wo, oh Sanjay Kashyap ji, hi, namaste. Yes. Lovely. Okay, chalo. Without any much ado, we'll just start off with the discussion. I hope the presentation is. You guys can see the presentation. Just maybe a quick comment on the. I guess so. Let me just check. Yes, visible. Okay, lovely. Cool. So again, a data point which you would not have heard: sharp gaps versus shark gaps, gaps that eat other gaps, and what happens post that, right? One is the observation part. We will look at the observation, that why this observation, what is the definition of this observation, and then what has been the historical context of such observations, and whether we can try and draw some bit of parallels. So we'll start off with that. And the second part, of course, another interesting observation, which is there in the US markets or the US indices, and how that observation can actually help all of you guys, especially if you are a global watcher, which I'm, of course, sure that all of you guys now are. Okay, so this is the first chart which we mentioned, I think, a few days back, that there have been three gaps which have been formed in the last 1800 point rally. When we started off, mentioned that we are in for a monster rally. उसके बाद में हम देखेंगे तीन gaps form हुए थे, correct? The first gap was around 22,500, 22,600. The second gap was just around the 23,000 mark, and the third gap was around 23,400 levels, mota moti. So there were three gaps which were formed. The first, rather the third gap in this sequence was filled. The second gap was filled, but the first gap, which till last week Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, remained unfilled. But today that gap has been filled significantly, and that gap has been filled with a very sharp kind of a price drop, which has happened for the index. Now, the understanding is that once the gaps are filled with another gap, we called it as a shark gap. So it's not a sharp gap, it's a shark gap, where a small gap gets filled with a major gap for the index in this case. Okay, let's understand the premise of the shark gap, and then what happens post the shark gap, and why such kind of a, I think if I can use that word, obnoxiously sharp gaps, whether they get filled or not for the index. So this is the this is the current chart for the index, the Nifty, right? As you can see, there were three gaps which are formed. Today's price action, you can see this red line, which I'm marking out in the arrow. This red line is basically the shark gap on the index, correct? Shark gap. So this gap is almost like a 700 point gap now. 22,900 se mota moti we formed the gap, the upside. 22,200 thereabouts is where we've closed on the lower side of this gap. So it's almost like a 700 pointer gap for the index. Just see this, that this major gap has completely eaten out this small gap. Okay, I hope you guys can see this, because this is a very important observation. Extremely important observation, right? This major gap, this shark gap, has eaten the small and the more important or a pertinent gap for the Nifty. Okay, so this is the identification part. Let's look at the historical analysis part, that what happens when such kind of a shark gap gets created. Okay, so let's see some interesting data points. Yeah. Over here, for example, there is this gap which is being formed. Just look at the arrow. There is this gap which has been formed. Post that gap, you see this sharp gap down. The index goes into a sharp gap down over here. This is very recent, like 6-8 months back, where the index goes into a gap down. We call this as a shark gap, where this major gap consumes the previous gap. What happens post that? The index maybe falls for a couple of days, remains into a range, but eventually, so this path is difficult कि क्या कौन सा path index लेता है, but eventually this gap gets filled. Can you see this? So in this case, it's a matter of, let's say, 10 or 12 trading sessions where this shark gap gets filled. I hope you're understanding the terminology which I'm using. A gap which was formed eats the small gap, and eventually, after a series of trends below the gap, that shark gap, gets filled Sometimes it's partial filling, sometimes it's full filling, which happens for the gaps. This is the other example over here. You can see a gap has been formed. The gap has been closed by a sharp gap over here. After 3 4 5 days of the index hovering, in this case above the gap, eventually the gap starts to get filled partially, and then the index resumes the trend. I hope you're understanding this part, right? Let's look at another example, 2021. You can see this classic, एक sharp gap form होता है, right? There's this gap, almost like the current charts for the Nifty. दो तीन gaps आए, उसके बाद में gap down हुआ, gap break हुआ, और ये वाला gap हुआ. This red line which you can see is the sharp gap. This close and this close caused this gap. एक दो दिन market up down करके, you see this recovery in between, partial filling of gap. Almost 3/4 of the gap was filled, and post that is where we saw the index going to a further downtrend, right? So we are almost seeing a very similar chart for the Nifty right now. Let's go back 2019. Same, there was a gap. You can see this. I'm using the arrows. There was a gap over here. That gap was filled with a sharp gap. Index fell down lower. We went through an up down movement. Eventually, that gap was filled. In this case, after 1 to 1.5 months, that gap was filled. So now we go back to the first chart where we are right now. Clear? 3 gaps. This is the sharp gap. We are right now over here. Maybe there could be few swing actions over here. The index can hover around 22,000 mark. But if you ask me from now to say the next 1 month, broadly, we should be looking at a filling of this gap. This massive 700 point gap, this massive 700 point gap should be filled. At least 3/4 of the gap should be filled. हो सकता है full gap भी fill हो जाए, but at least 3/4 of the gap is filled, which means it tells you that short term wise, maybe there could be a scenario of panic, but slightly more than short term, if you ask, then post that initial phase of volatility, the markets should settle and we should come back into a recovery and filling of this sharp gap. Clear? So all examples, all the previous examples, whenever there's been sharp gaps, those gaps eventually get filled. Sometimes, as I said, partial filling can happen. Sometimes full filling of the gaps can happen. What will happen this time around? Very difficult to anticipate. But the probability and the data is very strongly in favor that gaps, and especially sharp gaps, get filled. Let's look at the other part of the observation today. So, if you remember, we do track put call ratios. In fact, I tweet a lot about the put call ratios and how the put call ratio gets into an extreme. Today, the put call ratio for the Nifty touched almost 0.5 to 53. The last I had seen, closer to 0.5. If a put call ratio जितना closer to 0.5 अगर होता है, अगर index respects that data and post that if you see a rally, which means that this is a normal phase of a correction, or the correction is getting normalized. So, for example, if in case tomorrow we see, say for example, if you see a gap down and if you see the put call ratio coming back to 0.5, higher chance that this time around with the put call ratio, if it hits a 0.5 level, the markets or the index would see an eventual consistent bounce. So बार 0.5 के आसपास अगर put call ratio आएगा, तो chances हो जाता है कि index वहां से बार bounce करेगा. Okay, let's look at the second part of the observation. So I hope you loved the first part. Correct. The second part of this observation, right? The part for US markets. Why is this important? Because we all know that the US markets currently could probably hold the key to where global markets can rally from here on, if there is any kind of a rally or trend in place. Now, this is the charts for Dow Jones. where currently we made a double top at 45,000 mark. As you can see, this is a double top 45,000. This double top got confirmed as a breakdown over here at 42,000 mark, which means 3,000 pointer motamoti is the double top pattern ka depth. So you subtract this 3,000 from 42,000 mark, we'll end up to almost 39,000, 39,000, 38,800 approximately for Dow. I think on Friday we closed at that 39,000 odd mark for the Dow, which means we've partially filled the first part of this double top formation on the Dow Jones. This is the Russell 2000. We have not yet formed a 2000 double top for Russell 2000. वो कब confirm होगा? When Russell 2000 breaks below the 1650 mark. So for anyone who's tracking the global markets, just watch this chart out. The Russell 2000, it's a small cap index for US markets. If the Russell 2000 breaks below the 1650 mark, there could be a further panic kind of a sell-off which could happen in the US indices. This is more of a broad term, like not just immediate short term. आजकल का नहीं है ये. अगर 1 से 3 महीने में अगर Russell 2000 1650 का लेवल ब्रेक करता है, I believe that a second round of panic or correction could come back into the US indices. So it's a very, very important and a significant data point. Just if you can see this, this was a double top which was formed for Russell 2000. And यहाँ पे देखो डबल टॉप कंफर्म हुआ. जब ब्रेक हुआ उसके बाद में एक सेकेंड राउंड ऑफ पैनिक आता है या एक लास्ट राउंड ऑफ पैनिक आता है. दिस हैपेंड इन 2020. We are still over here as a double top. We are in the middle part of this double top. So we are almost at 1900 levels or thereabouts for Russell 2000. If we break below 1650 mark, थोड़ा सा US market में pain extend हो सकता है in the short to medium term. Okay. This is the interesting data point. So what happened was that in the US markets, the Dow fell by 4% out of the 38 days in the previous. So we looked at the last 25 years. Of course, 25 years is a very small history, but in the last 25 years ka history dekha Dow ka, and we saw some interesting number crunching analysis that when the Dow has fallen by 4% and more on a single day, out of the last 25 years of history from 2000 to 2025 thereabouts, the next 5-day return, 15-day return for Dow has actually been positive, which means kya hota hai? First, there's a 4% fall, then maybe for 1 or 2 days there is a further correction, but post that there is a case of a recovery which happens in the Dow. So this is the last 25 years of history. Very important. I want you to just pin this observation because we will use this observation and we'll try and corroborate or supplement this data with other such indicators. Okay. So first for Dow Jones was 4% ke baad mein, in the last 25 years when the Dow has fallen, the average 5-day return is a plus 1.5% and the average 15-day return is a plus 2.4%. This is the data point which you can maybe if you guys are good in Excel or you want to have that data crunching, you can see this data crunching for the Dow, that whenever the Dow falls by more than 4% in the next 5 days, in the next 15 days, this is the kind of return expectations which we expect in the historical such incidences. Then the second part of the observation, I think we flagged off, this, I did flag it off on ET Now channel in the previous week, where I mentioned that if the CBOE VIX crosses about 35 mark, that generally is a sign or a case of panic which enters into the US index. However, once the panic settles and the VIX falls sub the 35 mark, we see a new bull market emerge in global parlance. So 2008, for example, second half में जैसे ही VIX ने CBOE VIX crossed 35, we stayed about this level for 3-4 days consecutively. Post that, you saw the VIX rising sharply, and that led to a capitulation kind of a fall. But post that, once the VIX starts to correct, a new bull market emerged once the VIX falls below 35 mark. You see, March 2009. So you can see this month of 2009. मोटा मोटी March 2009 के आसपास में VIX fell below, CBOE VIX fell below 35. that led to a major bottom across all major global equity asset classes. Right? You can go back to history and you can check this data point. Again, over here, 2020, when CBOE VIX rises above 35, there's a sharp jump in the CBOE VIX. 2020 का fall in the correction, I am sure all of you guys remember. The VIX rose up to almost 80 plus, but the moment VIX came back lower, so आप यहाँ पे देख रहे हो कि मार्च अप्रैल मिड अप्रैल एंड के आसपास में VIX fell sub the 35 mark. That led to a very quick bottom formation and a high zone of confidence for the US markets and of course for most of the other global markets. Can someone tell me where is the VIX closing? Where did the VIX CBOE VIX closed on Friday? Guys, come on the chat box. Where did the CBOE VIX, did we cross above 35 or we were sub the 35 mark? The CBOE VIX. We closed at 40 plus, right? So CBOE VIX, even if you Google, we closed exactly. Manoran says 45, so we almost had 44 plus point something something for the CBOE VIX. Correct. So now again, what is important? VIX तो चला गया 35 के ऊपर, जाने दो इसको जितना ऊपर जा रहा है, 45 जाएगा, 50 जाएगा, I don't know. I mean, difficult to anticipate कब जाके करेक्ट करेगा. But once the VIX starts to cool off and we fall sub 35, don't just sit. Don't just sit. That could be an opportunity once in 5 years or maybe once in 10 years. Okay, guys, I want all of you to just go back to this YouTube live and check the video and see this statement which I'm making. Once the CBOE VIX falls sub the 35 mark again, if we close below 35 mark, don't just sit out. Don't be on the sidelines and don't be in the waiting. That will be a fantabulous time whenever that happens. I'm not sure whether it'll happen today, tomorrow, next week, next month. I don't know. But I for sure am definitely watching for this huge observation. So second major observation, right? Shark gaps, first observation, the US market, the second observation, and the CBOE VIX specifically. The third observation is also very interesting. अब हम बात कर रहे हैं elevated VIX की. This is the India VIX. Okay, जब India VIX एक particular band के ऊपर चला जाता है, this is the extreme Bollinger bands. I'm sure most of you guys know what is a Bollinger band. But after this extreme Bollinger bands, you see an immediate cool off happening in the India VIX. Why is this important? Because this is where we are currently in the CBOE VIX. In the India VIX. Can you see this? Are we above the Bollinger bands? The upper end of the Bollinger band. Let me just darken this. Yes. So today when we've closed about 22.79 is the closing of India VIX today. We are above the 3 sigma Bollinger band, 3 standard deviation Bollinger band. As I was taking you back to 2000, yes, see this. This is August. You remember that yen correction, the correction based on yen? This. So जैसे इस India VIX 3 sigma Bollinger band crack करता है, boy, you are into very fragile territories. But fragile के साथ साथ important होता है, they don't last for too long, and eventually the bands they suck in the prices and the prices cool off yet again, right? Every single time we see that happening. Every single time. See this. The prices go above the 3 SD Bollinger bands and then eventually the India VIX cools off. So why is this important and relevant? Because today we've closed 15, 14, 13%, 13% above the 3 sigma Bollinger band. 13%, मतलब 20 का आपको इंडिया विक्स चाहिए था. We closed at 22.8. 2.8 पॉइंट्स अबाव द 3 सिग्मा बॉलिंगर बैंड। तो आप समझ जाओ कि देर इज अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग प्रोबेबिलिटी दैट कल या मैक्स टू मैक्स परसों आपका इंडिया विक्स इस बैंड के अंदर वापस से आ जाएगा। वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग प्रोबेबिलिटी, right? That India VIX will cool off significantly in maximum, I believe. Okay, I could be wrong, of course, but maximum, I believe, in the next 2 days, if not tomorrow, the India VIX should cool off and come back below the 3 sigma Bollinger band. Okay, मतलब वापस से 20 या 20 के आसपास आ जाएगा। Okay, now why is this important? Is in the next part of our, on the last part of our presentation. Correct? I hope you guys understood this so far. So CBOE VIX, when the CBOE VIX shoots up to 40 plus, this is what happens to the Dow. In the next 5 days, we are 1% up. Next 15 days, 2% up. 30 days, 3%. 60 days, 5%. 90 days, 7%. So on the day when the VIX closes at 40 plus, this is the average return over the last many years for the Dow, which means even this data point is suggesting, आप देखो हम कहां से कनेक्ट कर रहे हैं चीजों को, even this data point is suggesting that CBOE VIX shooting above 40 plus, yes, it's a case concern of panic, but the data point indicates that on an average, when the CBOE VIX sustains, goes above a unsustainable level, eventually it starts to cool off. That cool off results into most global markets, including Dow in this case, into a recovery mode. Let's look at the final data point, right? Okay. So again, this black line, what you can see is a 3 standard deviation band for 3 consecutive days. This is like the last 125 years of history, what we've analyzed for Dow. And rarest of the rare cases में 2 से 3 बार Dow closes below this 3 standard deviation bands consecutive days. Rarest of the rare observations. 2015 में हुआ था, 1998 में हुआ था, 1952 में हुआ था, 40 में हुआ था, 1920 में हुआ था. Like rarest of the rare, like once in 20-25 years kind of an observation, if I can break it up. Or third time, so on the Dow, S&P 500, etc., we've closed below the 3 standard deviation bands, right? When there is a 3 consecutive close below the 3 SD bands, there is an immediate recovery, a price consolidation for almost 1 month, and then post that we see a gradual rally. Correct? I hope you guys can see this. Why is this important? Because this is where we are on Friday's closing for Dow. Friday's closing for Dow. Right? We are at 38,000 levels thereabouts. We are below the 3 standard deviation band. First day. I am to actually praying कि 2 दिन और खराब हो जाए Dow और 2 से 3 दिन continuously 3 standard deviation band से नीचे close हो. अगर वो हो जाए, then we could be in for such a similar observation, where for 3 consecutive days, Dow closed below the 3 standard deviation band that eventually led into a, I'm not saying a V-shaped recovery, but a rally, a consolidation, and then a gradual pickup of trend. 2015 था, 1998 similar, 2 दिन 3 standard deviation bands के नीचे, a rally, consolidation, प्राइस अप ट्रेंड. आप देख रहे हो कितना सिमिलर डेटा पॉइंट है, सिमिलर, एब्सोल्युटली सिमिलर डेटा पॉइंट. 1952 सेम, द डाउ फेल शार्पली, we closed below the 3 standard deviation bands. Next few weeks we consolidated, remained to a range, and then a gradual uptrend picked up. 1940, this was the only time where the pace of rally was less. Okay, तो 3 सिग्मा Bollinger bands था, छोटी सी रैली आई, कूल ऑफ आया, बने, कंसोलिडेट किया, और यहाँ पे देख लो 105 का डाउ बिकेम 125. 20% ही रैली किया वो टाइम में, पर ठीक है, द कंटेक्स्ट ऑफ द रैली वाज अ बिट मोर लेस. So basically it tells you that you should try and take opportunity of the cool off which is happening right now in the Dow specifically. Last observation 1920. So 3 days continuously trading below the three standard deviation bands, a rally, a price consolidation, and then a gradual pickup of trend. So why is this important? Because this is where we are right now. I hope you guys understood this part, right? So five major observations in the last 120 years, all five worked in the same manner. Same manner. I hope you guys liked it. Manoharan, Bhavik, Vaibhav Jain, Papaya Shastri, Sahil Madan, lovely. Cool. If you guys have any questions, quickly, maybe another few minutes. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you have not done it already. Rajashri Dhar says great, lovely. Deepak Chabria says loved it, perfect. So Deepak of course is one of the brilliant guys. I am in touch with him regularly. He's also an Ultimian, I call him. Uh, so and Deepak, I hope you understand that how interesting we've managed to ride through in the last 1 to 2 months. And Ultima, apparently, our advisory service has been doing phenomenally well, even the last 3 6 months of this major market correction. Okay, now please, guys, just don't ask me about stock specific right now. It is better if we keep the questions a bit more broad based. Maza aa jayega. So Rajarshi, I'll probably wait, not answer it on ITC right now. But yeah, I believe that this is a good time where you should look to start accumulating stocks in a general manner. इनफैक्ट मैंने जो ऑब्जर्वेशन बताया आपको स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशंस का, आज एक एक्सरसाइज करना एवरीवन, just do one exercise that open your charts, whether it's your free charts or your paid software, add the three standard deviation band which I explained in the presentation, put it on stocks and sectors. Okay, you will be amazed to see that there are almost 4 to 5 large cap stock which are fully below 3 sigma Bollinger bands, fully below 3 standard deviation Bollinger bands, which means that very strong chances that those stocks which are fully below their 3 sigma Bollinger bands can see a V-shaped recovery. Okay, so I want you guys to do this homework, and if possible, you can write it on the comment box of the YouTube video. Papaya Shastri says gold from 90,000 to 56,000. I don't believe so. I don't see any major correction happening in gold prices. Maybe I think 80-85,000 के बीच में शायद एक बार वापस retest कर ले, but I don't see the gold prices falling that obnoxiously sharply, at least as of now. Okay, as of now. What is the name of the indicator? Bollinger Band. Yes, Vaibhav Jain, it is Bollinger Band. Any levels to look out for? Alice is asking. So as I said, the shark gap is 22,900 as the upside. से अगर हम 3/4 पे गैप फिल करते हैं तो हम 22,650-700 वापस आने चाहिए निफ्टी पे in the next 1 month. This coincides with the VIX observation. This coincides with the Bollinger Band observation, that what happens when we move into an extreme on the Bollinger Band. So gap, VIX, Bollinger Bands तीनों मिक्स करके हम एक ऑब्जर्वेशन पे आ रहे हैं कि आने वाले 2-4 दिन हो सकता है कि मार्केट प्लस माइनस कुछ भी हो, but eventually in the next 1 week, 1 month, broadly, we should be filling this major gap which we have created today. Okay, great, sir. Always something to learn from you, says ML Bagri. Thank you so much, Bagri Saab. Rajashri is asking, as per Elliott wave, will wave 4? Will wave 4? So okay, I am assuming that you're saying are we in wave 4? डिपेंड करता है वेव 4 आप किस हिसाब से देखो. अगर आप डाउन ट्रेंड देख रहे हो और वेव 4 देख रहे हो, या अगर आप करेक्शन प्राइस देख रहे हो उसमें वेव 4 अगर आप देख रहे हो, तो आई एम नॉट एन एलियट प्रैक्टिशनर. hardcore practitioner, so maybe I may not have the perfect answer over here, but I believe that we are into a phase where this downtrend so far will be met with a lot of volatility. I also, if you ask me as a personal opinion, I don't see that the US markets will come back very soon. They should take a lot of time, unless Trump goes back again on his words and reverses all the tariff and reciprocal tariff completely. Then it's a different ballgame altogether. But so far, when I look at the data, tons of data, I sense that we are in for a long drawn process where US indices could probably go into a correction, a drift, or maybe a bear market. Bear market is a better term because most of the global indices, the US markets indices, have fallen below the 20% correction from the recent highs. Okay, how do you spot these data points? Just how do you spot these data points? Just out of curiosity, Webhow is asking. Multiple tools is what we use, and we track these data points regularly, like multiple data points. We have a lot of systems which keeps on throwing those triggers every single time. Okay, Deepak Chabri is asking, sir, crude oil has fallen to a big extent. Does it mean recession at the door in US? Yes. So recessionary phases में क्या होता है? All asset classes they generally tend to correct, except for gold, which is considered to be a counterpart in recession times, which rallies. Most of the asset classes they go into a initial correction. So whether it's commodities, copper, crude, bond yields, equities, all asset classes, they generally tend to go into a correction. So yeah, your part of the analysis could be right. Nitin Patil is asking, will RBI policy have positive impact on market in this situation? Yes, this could be another data point, right? Thank you, Nitin, for asking this question. This week, we have the RBI policy. Lot of expectations that RBI policy can be in favor. In fact, today, I don't know if you guys watch ET now. You guys should watch ET now. Last half an hour, last 15 hours, 15 minutes, there was a news break which was announced. The first news break, which was seen everywhere, was there's a 2 rupee excise increase which was levied by the government on petrol and diesel. But the second part of the news, which was broken by the ET Now reporter, Mr. Prakash Priyadarshini, of course, disclaimer applies. He mentioned that eventually the cut in fuel prices will be passed on to the end consumer, which means that over the next few days or the next 1 or 2 weeks, we may actually see the fuel prices being cut by maybe few odd rupees or few odd paise, depends, I think, how much it happens, but that will be passed on. So that will be another boost which could happen. And this could probably lower the inflation, give RBI more room to try and go with the rate cuts going forward. Nityam Shah, Nitesh. Oh, hi. Nityam Shah, Nitesh. Hi, Nitesh. Sabyasachi is asking, what is the probability of a monster rally in this year? अरे कितनी बार monster rally आपको चाहिए? You already got a 1800 point of a monster rally. Monster rally and monster trend is different, guys. Monster rally 1800 points का rally मिल गया, उसके बाद भी हम बोल रहे हैं कि हमको और कितना rally चाहिए. So I hope the surprise which you're seeing today in terms of data points will probably tell you that we could be in for a similar kind of a, I will say, not a monster rally, but at least filling of that gap which has been created today. Okay, US market shows Weber is saying 3 to 4% down. So Bollinger Bands thinks, yep. And I hope it happens. Trust me, I hope that for 2-3 days consecutively, you see the US markets, especially the Dow, falling. If we see that, then we are looking at 5 scenarios over the last 120 years, which could get replicated. 5 scenarios in 120 years. So which means one scenario every 25 years. Once in 25 years की opportunity बन सकती है. Okay. Yep. Okay. Done. So that's it. Thank you so much, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And I hope you loved today's video. Don't wait, to pass it on to your friends, your families, your colleagues, this video, because I'm sure that all of you guys will get every single day with every single video something interesting to take home, something interesting which you can add to your understanding of markets, the intermarket analysis, the technical analysis part, etc., etc. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Be very cautious. Don't be like a blind trader over here, because as I said, every day the data points can keep on changing. So you'll have to be on top of the data point and how that could impact our markets. Just be a bit cautious. There is huge amount of volatility. जैसे ही जो data points मैंने बताया वीडियो में, once the data point starts to be into our favor, where you see the VIX dropping down, gaps getting filled, etc., etc., you will eventually see a fantastic premise for maybe a potential start of a new bull market. So with that hope, thank you so much, guys. See you next time in the next YouTube video live. Bye bye.